LGBTQ Democrats, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And could my fellow officers in the LGBTQ Democrats please stand or raise your hands, or standing is good. Let's do standing. All right, thank you. Also, could I have members of the club stand up for just a second? Yes, thank you. Raise your hands up. Thank you. We are everywhere. So, I wanted to let you know if you're interested in learning more about the LGBTQ Democrats of Montgomery County and signing up for our e-newsletter or joining the club, please speak with one of the club officers or stop by our table in the foyer after the event. And we'd be glad to answer your questions and help you become a member. And both allies and members of the queer community are welcome to become members. So before I continue with introductions, it is the month of June, and I want to say Happy Pride Month to everybody here. So there are a series of Pride events throughout the month that are being organized by Montgomery County's first at-large council member, Evan Glass, who's the first LGBTQ member of the county council. And there's some informational flyers on the table outside, and you can go to his council website to see the full list of events from Family Day at Glen Echo Park to a screening of Before Stonewall at AFI and a drag performance in Denizens Brewery. So I also wanted to thank our co-sponsors for supporting this event. This is Do the Most Good, Montgomery County Young Democrats, Montgomery County Latino Democratic Club, the Montgomery County Association of Black Democrats, the ACLU Montgomery County, and the People Acting for Meaningful Change. And I'd also like to just quickly mention the elected officials who are attending today, and welcome Delegate Charlotte Crutchfield from District 19 and School Board Member Brenda Wolf. And we have representatives from the following elected officials as well: Evan Glass, County Council Member at Large, and Will Joando, County Council Member at Large. So thank you for coming, those folks and our sponsors who have helped bring this event together. Thank you. And so, why are we here? Specifically, why have the LGBTQ Democrats organized this event? What do LGBTQ people have to do with the county planning board? Well, LGBTQ people face employment discrimination at a higher rate than non-LGBTQ people. And even if employed, there's a pay gap between us and our non-LGBTQ counterparts. We face discrimination in housing searches, and we're more likely to struggle to find affordable housing, as 20% of queer people and 39% of trans queer people live below the poverty line. And indeed, we face homelessness at higher rates than non-queer people, especially among queer youth, who comprise 40% of homeless youth overall. And so all of these issues are directly or indirectly influenced by the roads we drive on, buses and trains we can get to, development raised or halted. And as Dan Reed, one of our club members, eloquently put it in his blog, Just Up the Pike, for LGBTQ people who disproportionately face economic and social hardships, where you live and what jobs you can get to are crucial to your ability to live a good life. So one of the candidates that you see up on the stage tonight will be chosen by the county council to influence these factors for LGBTQ people and indeed for all Montgomery County residents. So again, welcome, and let us learn together about the Montgomery County Planning Board and the candidates who wish to join it. And at this time, please join me in welcoming to the stage our moderator for the evening, opinion writer for Bethesda Beat, Adam Panyuko.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming. This is great. So we're going to have fun tonight. We're going to learn a lot too. A couple of things. First, let's go over the rules that we have established for the forum. Just now, the candidates pulled numbers out of the hat to determine their seating order, and you see them here on the stage. To ensure fairness, we're going to rotate the question order. So each candidate will have a chance to answer first and also last. For the candidates, we're going to ask you to not interrupt each other. We're going to ask you not to respond to previous questions or respond to other candidates. Please answer the question that's asked. There is going to be a system of sheets associated with time limits on our questions. When you see a green sheet, it means that you have 1 minute left. Yes, ma'am. Good, good. When you see a yellow sheet, it means you have 30 seconds. And when you see the pink X, that is the knell of doom. And you must stop, or I will interrupt you. For the audience, we ask that you be respectful of candidates, hold the applause until the end, and please don't interrupt them. We're here to learn, all of us. Okay, next. Let's talk about what the Planning Board actually does, what this entity is. The Planning Board is one of the most powerful entities in county government. It was created in state law decades before the current charter of the county government was established. The Planning Board members are appointed by the county council, and their agency's budget is passed by the county council. Here are a few things that the Planning Board actually does. First, the board is the principal advisor to the county council on land use issues. It makes recommendations on master plans, zoning changes, transportation issues, and it also requests its own agency's budget. The board may comment on any legislation pertaining to land use and transportation issues, but on those kinds of matters, the final decisions rest with the county council. Second, it has the power to approve development applications like preliminary plans and site plans, provided that those applications are consistent with the relevant master plans and the zoning requirements. Third, the board has oversight of the planning department, the parks department, and the park police, which are all part of its own agency. The park land is owned by the Park and Planning Agency, and it's administered separately from county government. Now, here are a few things that the board does not do. It does not pass legislation, like changes to affordable housing or changes to moderately priced dwelling units. Legislation is the province of the General Assembly and the County Council. It cannot impose rent control. It does not set its own budget or anyone else's. It requests a budget that is approved by the County Council. It does not build transportation projects directly other than small projects on parkland. It does not oversee departments in the county government's executive branch, like permitting services or the transportation department. That's the county executive's job. It has no power to tell property owners specifically to whom to lease their property. It does regulate land use, but according to the zoning requirements, but it cannot tell property owners, hey, when you put up that building, you have to have a cool coffee shop. Can't do that. It cannot say, you know what, you got to put a Wegmans in there or no project. Can't do that. It cannot impose local ownership requirements or unionization requirements as conditions of development approval. It's concerned with use. And if anyone proposes that the planning board should do any of these things, keep in mind, the board does not have the power to do so. All right? Now that those orders of business are out of the way, let's get to the meat of the program, yeah? So we're going to start with Mr. Berman, and we're going to ask each candidate to state their name, your preferred pronoun, tell us why you're running for planning board. You have 2 minutes. Let's start with Mr. Berman.
Hear me? Nope. Wow. So this is a very strong microphone. My name is Pratap Verma. He, him. Sorry about that. I'm running for planning board. I'm a long-time, lifelong Montgomery County resident. I've been active in the community. When I first started getting involved in local activism, there was a vacuum for the need of having social media in my community, and I started a blog called Planning Forest Plan, which was an opportunity to get the community involved and get involved in all sorts of issues like pedestrian safety and traffic issues, and most importantly, how do we bring amenities to our community? And And after that, it turned into a advocacy group that I started called the Friends of Forest Glen in Montgomery Hills, where we were advocating for the redevelopment for Georgia Avenue and making sure that we could have a second entrance on the other side. Luckily, through a coalition I put together, we were able to get a second metro entrance, the CIP in 2017. And after that, I've been actively involved in making sure that the entire Georgia Avenue corridor gets redeveloped. My passion in life is land use. I know that sounds a little bit strange, but for the last 5 years, I've been a tireless advocate of making sure that our communities, particularly in areas that have been traditionally underserved, are represented in the county council. I recently threw a charrette where 75 people showed up and we were able to gather quantitative data, making sure that we were representing everybody in our communities. My husband and I just had twins, so I'm a little bit, what's up, what's down, I don't know what's going on, so excuse me. But I'm excited to be here, and thank you too much. Thank you.
As one who firmly believes that public participation is indispensable and critical for good decision-making, I want to thank the LGBTQ Dems for hosting this event. It's very important. My name is Bill Kerwin, and I associate with the pronoun he. I'm applying to the Planning Board because of my experience as a commissioner on the HPC. I served on the commission for 10 years, 5 of those years as its chair, and the Historic Preservation Commission is an advisory commission to the Planning Board. And what I brought to the commission are my skills as an architect who designs buildings in a collaborative and consensus building way, and I brought those skills to the HPC to assist us in our deliberations and determining historic area work permits and historic designations for important buildings within the county. And those skills were also honed as an architect, designing schools for MCPX. We had to hold community meetings and to share our designs for our schools, for the new schools and the school additions that we did for the schools we worked on. And you would be surprised that in many of those hearings and presentations, there were community members who did not want changes in their community. So I've been both respectful of the need for change, but also know of the challenges that exist out there for people who are resistant to change. Thank you.
All right, well, good evening. My name is Julian Hafner. I associate with the pronouns he, his, and him. I also want to thank the LGBTQ Dems for holding this important gathering. As somebody who has been involved in the community since I got here, I've been working tirelessly to try to reduce and narrow and get rid of barriers to government. I would like government to be more transparent, more relevant, and more responsive to the needs of the people. I'm running for planning board because we're at a critical point in our county. Make no bones about it, I love Montgomery County. But we are experiencing a demographic shift, the likes of which we haven't seen before in our history. We're getting younger, we're getting browner, we're getting less affluent. And as a result, the needs of the people need to be reflected in the decision-making bodies that have a direct impact on their lives. So to that extent, I'd love to bring a renewed focus to affordable housing. I believe that we have a crisis right now, and to the extent that folks are moving in here, they're going to need to be housed somewhere. And there needs to be an intense focus and indeed a commitment to preserving and expanding the amount of affordable housing we have in the county. I'm also running because I believe that transit is critically important, right? Access to reliable transit means access to economic opportunities, means a better county for all of us. So I would also bring a focus to public transit, prioritizing that when and where we can. And finally, economic development. I am a founder or co-board member of the Democratic Business Organization Council. And as part of that group, what we wanted to do was amplify the voice of businesses that are interested in being more progressive. And we also wanted to dispel the myth that Montgomery County is not open for business. We can be progressive and be open for business at the same time. I don't believe the two are mutually exclusive, and I bring that focus to the planning board. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chuck Calvin. I'm a he, and all the other pronouns that go with it. Anyhow, I want to thank you for having us here. I think it's a very important express ourselves and tell you what we're all about. I'm not a land use specialist. I'm not a developer. I'm not a politician. But I am an avid economic development advocate. And what you need in this county is affordable housing, an educated workforce, and fluid transportation. Adam wrote a column about 6 months ago. Is Montgomery County the second-class county? Well, I'm in favor of making it a first class, and I'll work with that county, and I'm going to work my tail off to do it. I've contributed to Montgomery County in many ways. I am on the Tax Cap Service Commission now, representing low-income, elderly, and handicapped people, trying to get tax cap service for them. I served 6 years on the Commission on Aging, and I'm dedicated to this county. I've got grandchildren. I've got a future in the county for future generations, not mine, future. Anyhow, I think I can do a good job for you, and I'm more interested in your concerns. I thought that affordable housing, employment. I sit on the Human Rights Commission, Friends of the Human Rights Commission. Many of those issues we
Thank you.
I'm Casey Anderson. He, him, and his are my pronouns. I'm currently the chair of the Planning Commission. I'm nearing the end of my second term. I got interested in this work because I moved here with my young family, and it occurred to me that it was crazy that I was afraid to send my son out to ride his bike on his own on our streets. And I thought that didn't seem right. That a suburb that's supposedly among the highest quality places to live in the entire country is the sort of place where you would be very concerned about letting your kids out to play because you're afraid they're going to get hit by a car. So I started coming to planning board meetings. I got to know the staff a little bit, and I really opened my eyes to all the ways in which the planning and the Parks Department influence our lives. And so I guess if I had to put my finger on why I do this, I'd say it's because I still want to be the sort of person who's making this a great place for everybody, particularly, obviously, for my son and daughter who are still at home, although my son's about to graduate from high school. So I'd like for him to be able to come back if he wants to, find a place that he can afford. I'd like to make this a great place for my daughter. I'd also like to make it a great place for my parents, who are 79 years old and moved here after retiring the first time in Florida, and found that that's not a very hospitable place for people when they get older, because there's so many people who are elderly that they wind up being sort of fall between the cracks. And one of the things that I think is great about this community is that we support people at all stages in their life. And that's why I want to continue on the planning board to make this place be the kind of place that my kids can come back to, and that my parents can thrive, and people like me in the next generation can have the same opportunities I did, hopefully even better.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandy Brooks. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I live in Wheaton. And I am an organizer, an educator, and a design and planning professional who has spent nearly 20 years working on social, environmental, and economic justice as it relates to land use. And my background includes architecture, it includes community design, development, and planning, and it includes local and sustainable community food systems. And I'm running because I believe in community-driven planning. It is, in fact, my opportunity that I had living in Somerville, Massachusetts, to participate in crafting the comprehensive plan for our city, along with 60 other community members, that taught me what is possible as a resident when we have the opportunity to be an actual part of the decision-making that shapes what happens in our communities. It taught me to love local government and to understand the kind of role that I could take. And because of serving on that comprehensive plan steering committee, because of serving on the zoning board, also in Somerville, I'm here because of what I know that planning can do. And I know that setting that frame for how we do land use in our communities critically shapes our everyday lives. And so it's essential that all of us in this room are part of that process. It is absolutely essential because otherwise we get bad planning decisions. We get unjust planning decisions. We get planning decisions that foster and exacerbate inequity. And that is not tolerable for me or my family or for the people and places that I love. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go on to our next question, and Bill Kerwin is going to start. For this question, you have 1 minute to answer. 1 minute. Arguably, the biggest land use issue currently under debate in Montgomery County is the governor's road widening proposal for 495 and 270. Because the parks that are adjacent to those highways are controlled by the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, that body can refuse. The county council has instructed the planning board to do just that. Hold on to the parks, don't turn them over to the state. Do you agree with this decision, which could mean that the toll lanes are not added to a widened 495 or 270? 1 minute.
Thank you. Yes, I do agree with that decision. I think the widening plan is flawed in the sense that it was not accompanied with an environmental impact study and nor a transit study. I think those two components are critical to understanding the impact that transportation has on both those arteries and understanding that the solutions are not going to be just found with the automobile. Not everyone in this county owns an automobile, and they need alternative transit solutions as well. So I advocate for multimodal transit solutions and solutions that will serve everybody's needs, not just the owners of automobiles. Thank you.
Okay, so in a word, yes, I agree with that decision. I agree with my colleague here that the governor's proposal is not well thought out, and it wasn't the result of community input. In fact, I think it contravenes the will of the majority of the folks who believe that it's a bad idea. And what's more, I don't know that you can expand the Beltway or 270 without severely impacting businesses and the homes that abut those roadways. So for all those reasons, I think that it's ill-conceived and something that I wouldn't support. Alternatively, what I do support is the same amount of effort and time and investment that's being put into the study of the expansion. I think we could do well to put that behind public transit options and alternatives to road widening. I'm not sure that road widening gets us to where we want to be, which is alleviating the traffic that we face daily. I'm a resident of Gaithersburg and often find myself in bumper to bumper, and I'll leave it at that.
First of all, I agree with this gentleman. We should make better use of the present footprint of these roads, the present width. I think there's much that can be done. I'm also from New York. I'm a great advocate of mass transportation, and I also represent the News Bus and wearing another hat. So I'm interested in intercity transportation, bus transportation, etc. I think the lanes can be adjusted, much can be done within the present footprint without impacting neighborhoods. My whole philosophy in creating fluid transportation and development is to try not to impact our neighborhoods. I think they're very precious and they're...
Thank you.
I agree with the county council's position, which Councilmember Hucker has articulated very clearly and persuasively this morning at a press conference, which is transit must be included. The segment between the 270 split and I-95 should be at a minimum deferred until the end, if not completely eliminated. And we're prepared to back that decision. I just got back from a meeting this afternoon with Pete Ron at MDOT headquarters and communicated that we're prepared to litigate that if necessary.
I'm very glad to hear that my colleagues and I concur in supporting this decision, not to support the widening. I want to note that transportation solutions for residents in the up-county are essential. And even as we put away this particular solution, we have to look very, very seriously at how we are making sure that residents in the up-county can connect in livable ways to the rest of our county and the other things that they want to do. But I also want to mention this from a perspective of climate change. Y'all, we are in a crisis, and we are about to burn out our planet. And one of the things that is going to mean is that we have to make some hard decisions if we and our children want to continue to live here. And one of them means that we have to change the way that we get around this county, and we have to do it right now.
I too agree, the Beltway should not be widened, or 270. If you look at the original Beltway plan, if you look at the location of Holy Cross Hospital, the original plan didn't include these Lexus lanes. This is something that's a new construction. You see it in Virginia. We should be exhausting all transit options. If you look at something Sierra Club put out a few years ago, the Purple Line could actually extend over to Virginia. There are options available. Recently, there was also a monorail option that was thrown out there that should be at least studied. If you look at the impact on our parks like Rock Creek Park, Sligo, the impact on these very fragile green spaces is very significant. Also, in my own neighborhood in Forest Glen, over 20 houses would be decimated. These are people who are living near transit, and then their houses are going to be destroyed because of the Beltway. The irony is there, and so we can't let this happen. Also, there are other alternatives like micro-transit policies where people can use Uber, and we can subsidize policies where people can get connected to transit. So this is something that's very important.
Thanks. All right, next question. You're going to have 2 minutes for this question. What can the planning board do to make Montgomery County the safest and most welcoming place for immigrants, people of color, and the LGBTQ community to live? And we're going to start with Julian now.
Thank you for the question. I believe that we have the tools to make this a model for how we treat immigrants, people of color, youth, other marginalized communities. First, we have the will. I think that this room is representative of this Montgomery County spirit that is welcoming, that is inclusive. What we need are institutions that mirror this room. And that is what the impetus behind my submitting my name for this position was to ensure that, in fact, the planning board that has such a profound impact on almost every aspect of our lives is the work is seen through the lens of equity, is seen through the lens of wanting to do for the least among us. As I mentioned before, changing demographics suggests that the folks who are moving here aren't necessarily the ones who are most civically engaged. I would love for the planning board to do more of the work to meet the people where they live, literally. And I believe that with the upcoming general plan revision and the focus on the communications plan from the board, we have the opportunity to do that. So to answer the question more directly, what we can do is we can ensure that we have affordable places to live. We can ensure that we provide meaningful access to transit, which I said before is a direct route to economic stability. And what we can also do is ensure that we use the zoning laws and our ability to plan to ensure that where we plan there are going to be jobs, that there are going to be there are ways that we can amplify and that we can increase economic opportunity. The zoning laws gives us that opportunity. So those are all ways that I think we can do a better job here.
In spirit, I believe in inclusivity and sensitivity. As a practical matter, this is done incrementally. I just, as a member of the American Muslim Senior Society, I arranged financing for Muslim caregivers to take care of elderly Muslims. That's just because there is a cultural affinity. I think we have to reach out. We have to bring quality of life into our planning process. One of the things that I feel is delivery of services to the community in a sensitive way. I think this can be built into the psyche of the Planning Commission. And if appointed, I will try to bring sensitivity, understanding, and this inclusivity into the thinking and delivery of services to the community from the Planning Commission. It's a general philosophy.
I think we need to introduce more housing choices, and that means both affordable housing in the sense of regulated units like the MPDU program, directly publicly subsidized units through the county government, but also market rate housing, because there are opportunities, for example, with accessory dwelling units, with what some people call missing middle housing, to create a broader diversity of choices. And I think that that's relevant to anybody who struggles with affordability. At the beginning, we were talking about how there are LGBTQ people who are marginalized and as a result have lower incomes, struggle with housing discrimination. One of the ways in which any group of marginalized people can benefit from what the land use policies in the county involve is to create opportunities for less expensive and more flexible housing that don't assume that everybody needs to live in a single family house with multiple bedrooms, that there are different types of families, different people need different amounts of space, have different preferences in the way that they want to live their lives, and I think that we've made some great strides on that score. Last thing I just want to mention is there's a lot of discussion about gentrification and displacement. One of the ways that gentrification and displacement happens is market pressure increases the price of housing because there's not enough of it being built. And I think we do need to focus on subsidized housing, we need to focus on regulated affordable housing, but we also have not kept up on production of market rate housing, and that's necessary in order to make housing affordable for everyone.
So I think that one of the first ways that the planning board can make this county more welcoming for all the people who live here is to actually create processes that welcome all of the people who live here into planning decisions. And as a planning and design professional, I'm going to tell you that that means that we have to radically change most of how we do planning. It means that we have to go well beyond these input and information processes to processes where we shift the locus of decision-making into our hands as community members. And that means that we are going to have to do very different things in terms of people's access to information. It goes well beyond a communications plan into ways that we are actually directing planning staff to support and empower residents of our communities in making planning decisions and facilitating difficult planning discussions where we have to figure out how to make the trade-offs between different priorities in our community. And I actually believe that every single person in this room is capable of doing that with one another. I believe that we have to make sure that people, when they come to the planning board, are treated with respect, especially when they are bringing forward issues around injustices that people are seeing in planning. And I do believe, and I'm glad that Casey brought it up, that we have to be much, much more creative in how we establish this framework for development, not only residential, but also commercial, because a lot of our small businesses, many of which are immigrant-owned and minority-owned, are struggling too. And we need to be controlling land and taking it out of the speculative market, using tools like community land trusts and other things that put control of land use back into our hands.
As a gay man and a first-generation Asian American, this issue is very close to my heart. You know, when my parents immigrated here in the 1960s, they didn't have time to go to planning department meetings. You know, they're working 3 jobs. My dad was working as a professor, doing an ice cream truck in the weekends. You know, the biggest problem we have in the planning process is often that you're not going to the populations that are readily available to give that qualitative data. And so you talk about, you know, where do you go? You have to go, you know, into faith institutions or, you know, kind of outside of the box. People don't have time to come to a meeting after work because they often have a second job after that. The biggest thing as a gay man I can tell you is that, you know, Montgomery County is a very welcoming society. It's a wonderful place to raise a family. I have experienced some discrimination, but largely speaking, it's a great place to raise a family and be gay. But the biggest thing we can do in planning process is create a sense of community. That sense of community, the way we plan our neighborhoods, allows folks, especially our trans community members, who are discriminated. You know, I recently helped a friend out who was afraid to go to a car mechanic because she was non-gender conforming in appearance. And how do we create that community where we're walking, we're meeting, there's a central location? That's planning. And that's how you support minorities in ways that you can't necessarily see in a traditional planning textbook. By creating that sense of community, immigrant families, LGBTQ families, individuals, they're supported in different ways. And finally, we need an LGBT clinic. There's not a medical clinic in the county. Having that kind of resource, you know, our health issues, there's all sorts of other mental health issues that are exclusive to our community. So we need that support.
So I think to be an effective planning board member, you have to be an agent of progress, an agent of social justice, and an agent of stewardship of both the built environment and the natural environment. And to that end, in assisting our marginalized communities and lifting them up to be part of our greater community, I relate back to my experiences in Silver Spring. I grew up here in the 1960s and 70s, went to Oakville Elementary, Eastern Junior High, and Blair. And it was one of the most diverse communities in the country at that time. And the lessons that taught me in community building and the experiences that brought to me in living with my fellow students who came from all different walks of life, and from all different countries and ethnic origins, that instilled in me the importance of diversity in community building. And I think it's a critical component. So as we move on into our general plan going forward, I think we have to encourage that all of our communities celebrate that diversity and that inclusiveness. And to that end, we have to make affordable housing one of the most important elements of our general plan moving forward. And to achieve that, we're going to have to get creative with our development plans to potentially allow credits for developers to contribute to affordable housing and giving them density credits in their developments. And then we've got to, coupled with that, we have to pursue multimodal transit solutions so that people who live in that affordable housing have options getting from work and home, because we want these community members to stay in our community. We do not want them moving away to other jurisdictions. We have to bring everybody up.
Okay, next question. You're going to have 2 minutes to answer this question. Since the metro system was built in the 1970s, the county's growth strategy has been focused on increasing density around metro stations. The problem today is that metro rail ridership is at its lowest levels in almost 20 years. Does it still make sense to focus our development near metro? We're going to start with Charles Kaufman.
Okay.
2 minutes.
I have a dream. I have a dream that between Grosvenor and White Flint stations, we build a cultural center along, we call it the Ted Lerner Cultural Center, along Rockville Pike, and then build into White Flint. I see the museum as the core of a conference center. I see Strathmore developing more robustly as an arts and cultural center. This would infuse 355 as a corridor, a cultural corridor, a residential corridor, all the way from Clarksburg down to Western Avenue. I think that 355 is the core aorta of Montgomery County. And it's a lot of parking lots, a lot of land that can be used without impacting neighborhoods It could develop affordable housing for its full 29-mile or so length. And I feel that as a core cultural center, we need something of interest, something to attract attention to Montgomery County, to make it different, to make it more attractive regionally and internationally. So my plan is to develop that core area and then expand up and down 355.
Thank you.
I think that developing around transit is still relevant even with ridership down in Metro because the data shows, number one, that vehicle miles traveled per household are about half near transit what they are in more far-flung parts of our county. So even to the extent that some people may not be using transit, Metro demonstrably dramatically reduces vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. Secondly, the importance of transit extends beyond just moving people. It's also about the gravitational pull it exerts on the development pattern around it. By that, I mean the mix of uses, the fact that you can walk down the street to go to the drugstore if you wake up and your daughter has a sore throat. The fact that you don't have to get in your car necessarily to go to the dry cleaner. All those things not only reduce use of cars, but they also make everything you do in life more affordable because transportation doesn't cost so much. So if we can extend higher quality transit to more existing affordable neighborhoods, I think that we have the opportunity to create a higher quality of life for everybody, also reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and also make our county more equitable by improving the quality of place in the neighborhoods that are more affordable.
Yes, I absolutely believe that we need to continue building around transit with equitable development controls so that people across the income spectrum can actually enjoy living near transit. I believe that it would be absolutely foolish and incredibly dangerous for us to abandon investing in transit infrastructure just as we most critically need a strong multimodal transit infrastructure as an alternative to driving. That said, we have to invest more in WMATA. This is not the purview of the planning board, but it's something that all of us can continue to advocate for around making sure that it is well maintained, not on fire, and also making sure that it is affordable. WMATA is too expensive for many people to use, and I will say that as someone living in Wheaton. Additionally, WMATA was designed as one of a radial system, as many transit systems are, to get people basically in and out of DC. But quite frankly, my biggest transit challenges are going from Wheaton to Rockville or Bethesda or other places in the county. So we also need to make sure that we are investing in transit systems that connect us to one another, not solely to DC. And that includes both a strong train network, but also very, very strong bus systems, and things that are reliable. That's how you increase ridership, is by increasing reliability. And that is what will actually make it so that we can make that transition away from the kind of transportation that is expensive and doesn't serve us and doesn't serve our planet, to the kind of transportation that will be sustainable over the long term for our county and our communities.
Metro is still very relevant. Under the leadership of Councilmember Tom Hucker, you know, the turnabouts at Silver Spring, now they're going all the way to Glenmont. And we have dedicated Metro funding for the first time. We have a tremendous amount of infrastructure going in with the Purple Line. We're just getting started. If you look at all of the impervious parking lot spaces all over the county, which are, you know, horrible for the environment, there are so many opportunities to build density around them so you do have more users for Metro. For instance, in Forest Glen, we have almost 15 acres of land that could be developed where people could actually be using Metro. Same thing in Glenmont, there's about 6 acres. You have a bus lot in Shady Grove that could be relocated elsewhere, and you could actually have more housing near Metro. So the key to investing in Metro is including making sure that we have enough people using it. You know, and if you're not going to have that, you know, of course there have been issues with maintenance. There have been issues with, you know, very simple stuff But the reality is, Metro is a public good. It's a structure that, in order for us to make sure that it's going to be working, we have to be taking it. And that means building around that. And so there's still opportunities. There was also a recent report, and this is kind of amazing when you think about it, with office space going down everywhere, with teleworking and people, things are changing in the way we do work. Office space actually is going up in terms of attractiveness around transit areas, particularly in Bethesda around the Purple Line. So that's an indication that we're just now tapping into something that could really make a difference in not only our environment, but how we are deciding to be as a community, as a county. And the future is definitely going to be transit, not cars.
As an architect and a student of urban planning my entire career, I know that throughout the world, the best communities and cities and towns that are livable have successful transit systems as a part of their development. And so I think it's absolutely relevant that we continue to encourage the development around Metro. I'm also very excited about the Purple Line and its potential, both at the Purple Line stations, but the Purple Line and hopefully future light rail that will expand on that system will help to make the Metro system even more relevant as it begins to fill in the blanks that were left by the Metro system and its in various different lane travel systems that they have there. But I think also ecologically it is absolutely critical. I think we have to, as Ms. Brooks mentioned, we have to begin addressing the environmental impact of carbon on our environment, and transit and multimodal systems of transportation will be critical to beginning to come to those solutions as we move away from the
Yes, and I'll just echo what my fellow applicants have said already, that Metro is absolutely relevant. And to the extent that affordable housing and reducing the amount of traffic on the roads is the goal, we absolutely need transit-oriented development. So I wouldn't equate the lack of ridership with the lack of demand for transit-oriented development. I don't think that the two go hand in hand. And what's more is that I think that to the extent that we regionally have taken have decided that Metro is something worth investing in, right? We've got a dedicated source of funding for the first time in 40 years, Metro's 40-year history. Like has already been said, we are at the infancy of the potential of Metro. And we're also, I think, in a prime position to start looking at transit holistically from a regional standpoint. So one of the things that I'd like to do, or one of the emphases that I'd like to see on the planning board, is more of a regional focus on transit, and working with some of our counterparts in the district and Virginia to really start to create that footprint that's going to create a regional transit system that makes it easier for all of us to get around, and thereby increases our opportunities for job creation and for economic advancement. So for all those reasons, I am in favor of transit-oriented development.
Okay, next question. You have 2 minutes to answer this question. Reflecting on the recent work of the planning board, tell us a master plan that you think was done right, and then another one that you think could have been a little better. And we're going to start with Casey Anderson.
Did you plan this time?
You were the ones that drew the numbers from the hat.
Well, I'll say that I'm probably proudest of the Bethesda plan because it created a mechanism to generate revenue to acquire and develop parks in Benton and Bethesda, which is something that the previous 2 master plans of generations of planners have tried to do and failed. And I'm glad to say that we've already delivered on a couple of those parks, and we have a couple more that I think are going to come online in the relatively near future. And in addition, we did that with additional requirements for design excellence, better architecture, which has never been tried in the county before, higher environmental standards, and additional requirements and incentives for affordable housing. So I was intimately involved in not only conceiving those ideas, but getting them through the county council in a very, I think it's fair to say, difficult process. So as I look back on it, I'd say that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of. As far as things that could have been done differently, I would say and I hope this isn't unfair to pick a plan that was done before I arrived, but I think that the Great Seneca Science Corridor honestly has been a disappointment. The life sciences jobs at Hopkins was promising and not delivered, and the decision to route the CCT through the area that Hopkins owns, the old Bellward Farm, really has created, I think, a huge setback for transit for the up-county, because it's created a project that's very difficult to justify in terms of its ridership. So I would say, as far as plans that went awry or sideways, that would be the one that stands out.
I think I'll echo some of Casey's comments around the Bethesda plan, and what I appreciate about it, I think, is the commitment to experimenting with different ways of doing density. And I want to acknowledge that even with those experiments, there are folks who have some real challenges with how that plan is accomplished. But I want to highlight the things that I do like about it, which is that I think that trying to find ways where we can increase density contextually, where we can push toward higher affordable housing requirements, where we can push more toward trying to figure out how we do and integrate parks into master planning. I think those are all good aspects of the intent and at least some of the execution around the Bethesda plan. I think that the challenges that I have with that plan are challenges that are similar to what I see with a lot of planning in Montgomery County, particularly around how residents are engaged in the process of making these trade-offs and making these decisions, and also the different kinds of housing options or development options in general that we actually make available, that we actually zone for and plan for. Coming from the community that I came from in Massachusetts before I lived here, there's just a lot of other ways that we could be doing housing that have a lot less impact, that are great at adding density. One of the plans that I'm most concerned about is actually the Littonsville plan. And I'm particularly concerned that the historically African American community there really feels deeply disrespected and threatened by that plan, and that it's another example of the way that county planning has decimated Black communities for decades across the county, from Tobytown in Scotland all the way up to Farm Road. And the fact that we keep disenfranchising the same people tells me we've got a huge problem. Thank you.
I'm going to pick a plan that is got a draft through the planning department, initial green light from the planning board. Still have a couple sessions left, but the Forest Glen Montgomery Hills plan, there hasn't been a whole lot of change in that entire corridor for a long period of time. We're looking and hoping to get additional density. There's a plan right now to give up to 120 feet of height near a metro station in Forest Glen, of course down in Montgomery Hills as well, near the big water tower. The Bethesda plan was obviously a big win because you not only have density where it should go on top of metro stations, but you also have a historically high affordable housing that you don't see elsewhere. Bethesda is an expensive area. And so to see that in that particular part of the county was a huge, huge win to see that actually happen. A sector plan that could have been done better, and I'm going to echo Mrs. Brooks' sentiment, but just provide some additional context to it, is the Littonsville plan. One of the things, the preservation of industrial space next to two Purple Line stations is a missed opportunity. And if you look at the plan, if you look at what was the existing zoning and then what was proposed, there wasn't a whole lot of difference in that sector. Industrial industries inside the Beltway next to mass transit should be looked upon as maybe changing in the future. And this is particularly the case in a place like Littonsville, where the community members said, we want a main street, we want amenities, and we also have access to transit as well. So that was a plan that could have just been a little bit more aggressive on putting density where it belongs, which is near a metro station.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with Casey Anderson that I think the Bethesda master plan was a very successful plan, particularly in regard to those effective traits that I mentioned earlier that I think planning board members have to have. I think that the Bethesda master plan really exhibits the planning board being agents of progress and also being agents of stewardship. I think the HPC was involved in some of the decisions in those master plans regarding some historic buildings, and I think the importance there is that we promoted change there. We didn't listen to the voices against change, and it was visionary in its view. Looking forward, I think to me I was just up in the Up County area today, and I think it's those communities in Germantown, Great Seneca Science Corridor, where it's not so much that the master plans failed or should have been done better, but the master plans have kind of left there to fester because they're incomplete. They desperately we need to go back to those master plans. We need to find out what are the components that are leaving those in a state of incompleteness, and we need to actively fill in those blanks to make those communities reach their potential that they have. There are transit ways that have not had any political muster to bring those to fruition that are necessary, the roadways that are at risk, that are critical to those plans. So I think it's very important when we do these master plans that we go back and reassess them on a regular basis and make sure that we help them reach their potential.
So I believe that, again, the Bethesda plan reflects, I think, the best of the planning board and what the potential is that we can, that planning offers. We were creative with the amount of affordable housing we created. We prioritized transit-oriented development. So Bethesda shows how planning can be done right. Where I think there's room for improvement, there are a few. Wittensville, absolutely. Again, shows that there's an opportunity, right, to be more inclusive in the work of the planning board and to hear more and to amplify certain voices that aren't historically heard at the planning board. By the same token, the West Park situation as well, and the folks that were impacted by the development that threatened to desecrate otherwise sacred ground where certain ancestral burial grounds were. That the planning board attitude sort of reflected a sense of pushing folks away as opposed to bringing them in. I think there was a missed opportunity there. And likewise, I'm a resident of Gaithersburg. The Up County is in desperate need of some re-looking at, that's a word, the master plans. I think folks there feel that they've been sold a bill of goods, right? That they moved there understanding or thinking that there were going to be certain things in place that just haven't materialized. And as a result, they are suffering. I think that there's also an opportunity for us to do better in the Up County as well.
Well, we all agree that Bethesda was a great success. I live in Bethesda. I love the plan. I think it's great. I also live in Westport, and we've got some problems there. First of all, you're correct that church situation, the burial situation is definitely showed a great deal of insensitivity, and it's tough. Another problem in Westport is, and I speak only because I'm familiar with it, is the transportation situation. I live on River Road in Little Falls, and we cannot take a bus directly into Bethesda. We can go to Sibley Hospital and Friendship Heights and Rockville, but it bypasses Bethesda. If you're going to do a robust development in Westport, you have to have transportation, bus service, etc., access to buses. I think what we're lacking in many plans is access transportation, that last mile, and I think we have to concentrate on the fluidity of transportation.
next question. Right now, several areas of the county are about to enter a housing moratorium because of school crowd. This means that new residential building applications will not be accepted in several school clusters around the county. Question is, do you support or oppose using housing moratoriums to deal with school capacity? This is 2 minutes, and we're going to start with Brandy Brooks.
So I support it because I think we have to stop building in places where we haven't built the supporting infrastructure to support development. Whether that infrastructure means roads and transit, whether it means schools, whether it means utilities. We can't continue doing this. The kinds of things that we are seeing, the challenges that folks have with transportation in the county is a result of not adequately building the infrastructure needs that we have to support this. We have to stop doing this. Part of planning and part of executing good planning is that we do all of the things that make a community livable. And we cannot continue asking our community members to bear a bunch of the burdens of school overcrowding, of traffic overcrowding, of brownouts when we don't have enough utility infrastructure, when we are giving away profits in some cases to developers who don't have to stay here and live with those conditions. I'm sorry, we absolutely have to stop. And if moratoriums are the thing that we need to put sufficient pressure on our public officials to make different decisions, then yes, that's the tool that we're going to have to use, because it then requires us as planning board members, as county council members, as other public officials to go back and say, we did not get this right, and we have to do it differently.
The moratorium policy needs to be reviewed. I mean, the problem is right now, for instance, in my own neighborhood, we're going into moratorium, right? And the Einstein cluster is overcrowded, there's a problem there. But the areas that are being affected, for instance, the entire section around the metro station is going to go under moratorium for an entire year. Same thing's happening in Montgomery Mall. There's the Westfield Group. A $650 million project is on hold right now because of the moratorium. In fact, they're even thinking about turning into senior housing, so because that's an exception to the moratorium. These are complicated issues. I'm a Paint Branch High School graduate in 1996. I have 3 kids. This is something that I think about all the time. The issue is also, there is revenue coming in from developers with regards to impact fees. So the policy needs to be refined in a way that we capture that revenue and build the schools that we need so we're not having overcrowded schools. But at the same time, transit-oriented development should not be hindered because of the moratorium. So the policy needs to be refined in a way where we achieve what we're trying to achieve, which is providing a world-class school system for our kids, but at the same time, we don't want to stifle revenue. So there has to be a balance between the two. And I think right now, the way the policy is written by the county council, the way it's implemented, I think you might see that it's going to be refined in the next few years, because really, this is a struggle that we're in. People move here because of the schools. We have the best schools in the area, no doubt about it. But the question is, how do we invest in them and not stifle the economy at the same time? And there is a balance there that we can achieve.
I agree with Mr. Verma. I think the study needs more, the moratorium needs to be studied much more closely. It's really only hurting us as residents of this county. It's not solving the school capacity issues. It's not helping the county meet its economic development needs. It's creating situations where we can't get the affordable housing that we want in this community. And so I think it really is something that we need to look at much more closely, because, and to be honest, I think it's a state capital issue. It's something we have to go to the State House in Annapolis and have our delegates go up there and fight for more funding for school construction. We need to take the Kerwin Commission findings. Kerwin's my father. But we need to take the findings of the Kerwin Commission and marry those with the findings of the Governor's Knott Commission, which was about reform for funding of schools in the entire state, and finding ways to simplify the approval process for school construction. We need to marry those two concepts together and get us more funding for schools in the county to relieve the overcrowding. I don't think it's going to get solved by the development moratorium.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with the folks up here. To the extent that the goal is to create more housing, which will reduce the cost of housing and essentially open up housing to more folks, a moratorium doesn't necessarily get us there. To the extent that economic development and creating jobs is our goal, a moratorium doesn't necessarily get us there. So really what I think this is really a challenge to the folks on the planning board, whoever is going to be selected, to figure out, like we said, balance. Balance is the absolute word, and a lot of the work that we're going to be doing on the planning board is about balance, balancing, competing on equally valid needs, right? We need affordable housing, we need economic development, but at the same time, we don't need more traffic. We don't need to make bad situations worse. But I believe that there are ways that we can address there are ways that we can address the issues and serve twin goals. And I think that that's going to be a challenge, but it's a worthy challenge and one that I think that we're all up for.
Moratorium is dumb and self-defeating. $40 million for a school is dumb and self-defeating. When I was a kid, our school was about the size of this building, maybe smaller. When we needed athletic fields, we had a common athletic field that several schools in the neighborhood used. However, the problem is that we're putting a lot of money into the capital, building schools, and not enough in operating them, teacher salaries and those. This policy has got to be changed to restrict building houses and enhancing neighborhoods with a singular purpose is wrong. It's just dumb. I don't know where the policy came from. Yes, we need better coordination with the state. We need more control over our roads. We need more control over our schools.
I think the current policy is based on the very reasonable assumption that we should align growth with infrastructure. The problem is, it turns out that there's a lot more that goes into school crowding than new development. And I've written about this quite a bit on our Third Place blog. The data shows that almost all of the new students that have come into the 6 clusters that are about to go into moratorium, just this coming up next month, almost all the new students have come from existing neighborhoods that are turning over. New generation of young families moving in with children, taking the place of empty nesters, people aging out. So it's based on a very reasonable premise that I think we can all agree with. It turns out that it just doesn't work as intended in practice. And I think what's so damaging about it is that we lose sight sometimes that housing is infrastructure. Yes, roads are infrastructure, schools are infrastructure, water and sewer is infrastructure, but a house over your head is a piece of infrastructure. And I think the reason we don't think of it that way is because generally housing is built by the private sector, whereas roads and transit systems and schools are built by the government. But it's still infrastructure that supports human beings and the quality of life. That's a social justice issue for not only the fact that people can't afford a place to live, but the fact that they can't live in some of the most desirable in areas with some of the highest performing schools. And it's also an economic development issue because the people who have a choice in the matter may conclude that if they can't find a place to live that suits their needs and their preferences, they might be better off going somewhere else and taking their skills to employers outside of our region. So I think for all those reasons, this current policy is not getting, it's not accomplishing, but I think we all agree is a valid goal.
Okay, next question. And this will be a 2-minute question. The DC metro region is one of the most expensive in the nation, with nearly 1/3 of Montgomery County residents renting their homes, and many of them being rent burdened meaning that they pay more than a third of their income for rent. How can the planning board help address this issue? This is 2 minutes. We're going to start with Partep Berman.
The biggest problem, if you look at the way the DC area grew, and in the 1964 general plan, Wedges and Corridors talks about this. Prince George's County, Montgomery County, the idea was you would go into the city, largely speaking, Montgomery County was a bedroom community. And the way we designed our community at that time, you had a single family home and you had your big lot and you commuted into the city. Well, that model's changed, right? Now we have economic zones in Silver Spring and Bethesda, we have the 270, we have the Life Sciences Corridor, the Biotech Corridor. The reality is, in order for us to have more affordable housing, we need more housing. And we don't have enough housing where we need it, particularly near transit. And so we're in this cycle where things are getting more expensive. I mean, if you are on the east side of the county, that same house, just 2-3 miles west can be double, if not triple the cost. Why? Because the way we grew, if you look at corridors like Route 29, they're jam-packed in the morning. Access to Metro dictates so much. So how do we do that? We have more housing, more diverse type of housing, that middle sector, the duplexes, the ADUs that we're talking about. That diversity of housing allows us to grow and make things more affordable. But the way we've grown as a city, as a county, as a general area, hasn't been conducive to having affordable housing. So we really need to increase density, particularly where we need it at metro stations.
Yeah, I think it's imperative for social justice and for the county's long-term economic viability that we concentrate on housing for all different walks of life, and particularly for the working poor in our communities. I think affordable housing is a critical issue going forward. We have to get creative with our planning decisions and creative with our master plans to encourage the development of affordable housing and encourage that affordable housing close to transit ways. I think that's absolutely critical. I think it's an issue that I think as I grew up in this county and experienced the diversity around me and experienced that mix of housing types that is so critical for a big community, it plays up again to that issue of diversity and how a diverse community makes the best kind of community.
So I see this as a economic issue. It's simple supply and demand. The more that we have, the lower the cost, the more affordable housing will be. So for me, we need to prioritize affordable housing, ensuring that, as has already been stated, that we offer choices, but meaningful choices to folks who aren't necessarily, or who don't often have choices, right? Folks who are constrained and rent burdened. At the same time, I think there's another side of this equation that we need to look at seriously. We also need to figure out how to incentivize developers to create the kind of housing that we know that we need. It's not just because we want it, they're going to build it, right? We have to make it in their best interest or in their interest financially to do so. And I think that there are tools that we can look at in working with the council to ensure that developers want to produce the kind of housing, the housing choices that we all know that we need to make housing more affordable in the area.
I'm from Manhattan. We build tall buildings on smaller footprints. Okay, that's step one. Build more housing, higher up, less footprint. My idea of expanding this dream I have of expanding along 355 makes some sense. We have to reach out to the far corners of the county with fluid transportation. Make transportation to the outlying district. You had that Montrose East highway that was killed. That makes sense because as you build outward to the borders of the county, the rights of way, the housing rights of way expand. You need more housing. You need diverse housing. And you can do it without impacting the neighborhoods, but you have to build better roads. And I'm talking about not the major roads, but the minor roads. Not the 270s and the 495s, but the 27s, 29s. The number is 97.
The one thing that I would add that hasn't been addressed is, I think one of the most effective things we could do for affordable housing is more transit. And by that I mean, if we add bus rapid transit networks, for example, up to 29 New Hampshire Avenue, corridors, even upper through 55, those BRT routes would make neighborhoods that already have substantial capacity for, have existing affordable housing, would create a better sense of place at some of those station stops and attract the kind of development that would improve the quality of life in those neighborhoods, and do it without the increased pressure on real estate prices that happen when the supply of transit is constrained. The reason why everybody's concerned about gentrification of the Purple Line is because there's just not that many stops, and everybody knows people want to live near transit. So if we can expand transit to serve people in a broader range of neighborhoods in the county, I think we can deliver what people are looking for, the way that they want to live and the access to the amenities that they want, without the problem of increasing pressure on real estate prices. And I think that we've laid the groundwork for that. I'm hoping that we'll see over the next few years a few of those BRT lines starting to get built.
I want to say something that is not popular to admit when we talk about affordable housing, which is that there is absolutely no way that the market will produce the level of affordable housing that we need in a speculative land and housing market. So we need to start there and understand that if we are trying to build more affordable housing, that we have to have a deep level of intentionality around we do it, around how we protect currently what we call naturally affordable or naturally occurring affordable housing, around how we create protected zones where the value of land is controlled so that you can build housing with deep affordability that will remain affordable for a long time. We need to look at how we are doing development deals with people who don't just want to do 10 or 15 or even 20 on a good day % of affordable housing, because the math does not work in terms of producing the level of affordable housing that we need. We need to be doing deals with folks who want to be doing 50 and 60 and 70% affordable housing and figuring out how that works. We need to be building a far larger range of housing types and understanding how we can get community-based developers and community individuals to be helping build this out as opposed to relying on large developers. And it will include strategies like ADUs. It will include strategies like looking at duplexes and triple deckers and a lot of other housing forms. It will also include things like social housing. Because again, if we want to see actual affordability in this market, then we need to start taking housing, our most critical public good that determines whether or not we are all here, out of the market and treat it as an actual public good.
This is our second to last question. Yay! This will be a very short question. We will have a 15-second maximum response time. It is also a yes or no question. The planning board appointments are 4-year terms. Do you commit to serving a full 4-year term? Yes or no? We start with Bill Kerwin.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes?
I think this question is directed at me, and yes.
Yes, and if needed, and if they allow it, I'll do a second one too.
All right. Last question. Hopefully a fun question. And we're going to start with Julian Hafner. Because the planning board oversees the park system, what's your favorite park in Montgomery County? 15 seconds.
Favorite park in Montgomery County? I'd say Black Hills. I love Black Hills Regional Park. Had a lot of good times there. I also live in Gaithersburg. I know that's not part of Montgomery County's park system, but we have some excellent parks in Gaithersburg, and I love going there.
Enough, you love parks too much.
I like the many of the smaller parks, the walkable parks, the ones that you go out and
Enough.
shop?
Too much park loving.
Well, as many people know, I've seen every single park. So it's really hard for me to narrow those down. It's like among my children. But I would say, let me say that I think the most underrated park is Fairleigh. And I think one of the reasons is that it's in the far northeastern part of the county. A lot of people think that's a foreign country. And
Thank
you really
you.
should check it out.
I just want to give props to the amazing trail system around my house that consists of Sligo Creek Parkway, the Wheaton Regional Park, and all the way up to Brookside Gardens. If you haven't walked that, it's amazing, and you absolutely should.
Hands down, Brookside Gardens, I grew up going there. The carousel, the trolley train, the Japanese botanical gardens, it's world class.
I'm also going to go big with Wheaton Regional because of my kids, and because of the diversity that you experience there every time you walk in that park. It's a fabulous place to see the diversity this county can celebrate.
All right, very good. Thank you to everybody who appeared on the panel. Great. Thank you to the LGBTQ Club for organizing this event. And thanks to all of you for showing up. Thank you.
Oh, wait, I have more. You already sent us out here very well, so actually at this time, candidates and advocates bring on stage, we're going to take a picture. And then audience members, I have a message for you now. Although the LGBTQ Democrats are not endorsing any particular candidates, we wanted to provide the opportunity for you to make your preferences known. And so we encourage you all to contact your council members to let them know what you think of the